people since he passed. And it's this. He was the best friend, a brother, and a sister that I've ever known for. Tiano Giorgio, salute. Salute.
Where's Daniel? Where's Daniel?
I'm not Daniel, I'm Tim Chambers. I taught George for 8 years in the English Language Institute from 1992 to 2000. He would light up a room. George was always fun. I was always problems. He carved out a niche in teaching English, highlighting theater and helping students have fun learning. Me, I taught contemporary world problems and current issues.
Yeah, baby.
I can remember being in the middle of talking about something really serious to my students, using the New York Times as our textbook, and then down the hall I would hear George laugh. You know, I hear his laughter in this room right now. He was a joy. He lit up any room he was ever in. So we've all come together. That's what has brought us together here, is George. So with that in mind, kampai, salute.
Salute!
Salute.
Did she smoke at one time?
Well, Daniel.
Person, and I'm going to talk. And I'm going to sing a song that might be unspoken. Yeah. My name's George. My name's Carol, and I met George's sister Carol tonight for the first time, and I'm thinking that's why maybe he liked me. I worked with him at FHP, and I met him in '79, and he and Marianne always had wonderful parties, and for the sesquicentennial, you had to do something, you know, the Mormon sesquicentennial, the Mormon church. Yeah. So we had to make something for it. So I typed some music, and I made a lovely song for George. I'll sing it for you now. Latter-day Saints, they're a U.S.-founded faith or sect from the town of Nauvoo, and when they get mad, they say, "Oh heck!" Still, they made it across this rugged land with the help of Heavenly Father's hand. When you're with the Mormons, it is wholesome and delightsome, and seldom frightsome. You'll have a reverent time. Just like George. Just like George.
I wish I knew him better. Somebody else. There you go. There you go.
My name is Sherry, and I met George in, I'm going to cry, 76 or 77, and I was I guess, kind of the youngest of this crew. We all met together. Marianne met George, the same day I met George. A bunch of us met when we did The Crimes of Passion or The Fatal Punch. Yay! And I got to be Lady Claire Rearbottom, which was so fun because later on one of my kids had a teacher in school named Mrs. Sidebottom, and I just kept thinking Rearbottom. But I just remembered, they were so kind to me, and it just made my high school life amazing because I had this giant group of kids that were all older than me. They were all off in college, and whatever's going on in high school, I was like, I'm going to go hang with the Uncle Ned Society. It was so fun. But I just want to say, when I turned 18, George and Marianne and the crew brought me a giant, they made me a paper mache Statue of Liberty that had the, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, and I'll give you, what is it? It's the Groucho Marx quote about, I'll give you a can of debilatory and some deodorant and something else. Anyway, and they also made me this backpack, because I was going to be going up to the U, and it was a yellow trash can that had been bolted to two hard pieces of wood that had some little straps, and they had written in yellow magic marker, you. And it was just, they were always doing funny things like that, and it was this gigantic part of my life, and I will be forever grateful to George, Marianne, and Steve, and Daniel, and everybody. Toast to George. I don't know how to toast.
People are like,
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Bob Walsh McDonald, and I'm a good friend of Kim and Rico. And with Kim and Rico, we had the pleasure of seeing so many of George's plays. But one Christmas, Kim called me and she said, we're kidless. What's going on in your household? And I said, well, we're kidless too. No one's coming home this Thanksgiving. She said, I said, I am happy to host the Plautzes for dinner. And she goes, well, that includes Rose and George. And I said, okay, no problem. Let's fill the table. That sounds wonderful. And I said, Kim, but the one problem I have at Thanksgiving is I can never make enough gravy. I just am terrible at the turkey gravy, which is such a critical part of Thanksgiving. Who doesn't love lots of gravy? And Kim goes, no problem, I'll send George. So George arrived 2 hours before everyone else and made our turkey gravy. But in the back of this whole day event, so I had my daughter and her husband home with us, Maureen and Will were joining us for that Thanksgiving. I had a call from Jesse saying, La, we are on the road, we are going to be there, we'll be there timely for Thanksgiving. And I said, okay, well, I'm planning serving, whatever, 4:30, 5:30, whenever the little thing popped out of the turkey. And he goes, we'll make it. And I said, okay. And meanwhile, George is in the kitchen, and George is overhearing this, and George is like, do not mess with my gravy.
Good job.
Should we go?
Yes.
We are approaching the podium.
Look at you. Bring it on.
We are Marjorie and Marianne. You might know Marianne.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, George, as a confirmed atheist all of his life, I have never known a more Christ-like individual.
Yes.
He loved everyone unconditionally. He just loved everyone. He was non-judgmental, and he was a great drug. For all the time we ever knew George, we were on the drug of George. More potent than methamphetamine or whatever. Probably even better than sex, but we won't go there. But while we were in his orbit, under the influence of his drug, we were better people. And now Marjorie and I are, I'll let Marjorie speak, and my hair is now white, and there's the big joke that I now look like Baby Jane from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. So I'll let Marjorie speak, and then we will sing a little song from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Yeah.
Cheers, George.
Cheers, George. Salute.
All right, Marjorie, take it over.
Last night we were together with friends at the spaghetti factory, and we didn't understand that Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is one of our favorite movies. This is completely unrehearsed. If there is a musician in the audience to give us an opening pitch. But before we begin, I just want to share that everybody here says, George brought us together. And then we say, what are we gonna do without George? I don't know.
We're gonna go on with our lives. He would not want any of us to mope or excessively mourn. He would want us to move on. If you want to know George's whole philosophy of life, pop on Harold and Maude.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, pop on The Loved One, which is even more fun.
So we're gonna sing I'm Writing a Letter to Daddy. I don't remember the words.
From Whatever Happened to Lady Jane. Here we go.
I'm writing a letter to Daddy.
George.
Yes, my place is heaven above. Instead of the stamps, I've used kisses. And postman said that would be fine.
I've written a letter to Daddy. George. His address is heaven above. And his name is ever I love.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
I ain't for anything. You ain't got nothing.
I don't know if I want to go after such a great performance. But, my name is Mark, and I'm a teacher at the English Language Institute. And George is the reason why I'm here today, why I met my wife Dina, and why we have two great boys. But George created a class at ELI called Dramatically Speaking, and the students have to take this class when they get to level 5, which is mid-level, where they actually do drama performances to help improve their English pronunciation and speaking, and just speaking in front of people. And at the end of this class, for their final exam, they have to make a movie together. And at our graduation party after the end of the session, they actually give Academy Awards to the best performances in these movies. And it's just been a tradition at ELI since I started there. It's an amazing tradition, and we're currently kind of restructuring some of their classes, and I've made sure that we keep that class the way it is. It's always going to be part of ELI. That's his creation, and George is always going to be a part of our program, and he just did an amazing job for our program. And he touched so many lives of students and teachers, and we're going to miss him a lot. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Come on, Lisa. You love microphone.
Microphones and I didn't know what.
I know.
Okay, friends for about 42 years. I met him just shortly after he got together with Marianne when the Uncle Ned Society was going strong. If you all know about that, you should ask, or don't, you should ask about it. So it was a social group that Marianne and George started in honor of Marianne's Uncle Ned, who was a real person. And the society was dedicated to literature and freedom and poetry and
Knowledge,
beer.
truth, and beauty.
Knowledge, truth, and beauty.
There you go. Yeah.
And whiskey. I got introduced to George and Marianne through our dear friend Sherry Purdue, who's out here somewhere. Yes, because George and Marianne would have these themed parties every few months. And the first party that I knew about that I was invited to was the World War I party. So I thought, what am I going to do? And then I realized that I have this yachtsman cap that my sister randomly gave me a few years ago. So I'm going to be the captain of the Lusitania. And so I looked him up and I looked the boat up and I built this scale model of the Lusitania with white lifesavers along the sides. For preservers. And I went to the party as the captain of the Lusitania with the boat, and I had to like walk into a room one direction and then do like a 6-point turn. But then later on we went up to the grassy area above the University of Utah Cemetery for war games for the sinking of the Lusitania, but unfortunately we had an actual injury and a guy's glasses broke and injured his cornea, so we all had to take him to the hospital. Yes, and so we show up at the University of Utah Hospital, and here's Mars, the god of war, and someone dressed as mustard gas, and then Marianne dressed as Manfred von Richthofen, and several others, including, you know, the Crown Prince who was assassinated to start the whole thing, and everything else. So we're all in the emergency room, and we finally get back to the house, and it was fine, but it was quite an exciting time. That's one memory. The only so later that same day, because it was the Lusitania, you may remember this, I believe, back in 1982 when there was the big flood and it came down the canyon and went down State Street, and then she built like walls with sandbags and planks. Well, this was the weekend of our party, and so we thought, wait, we've got a Lusitania. There's a river out there. Let's put the Lusitania in the river. So we piled in somebody's VW bug, we went down to State Street, and we got out with this Lusitania like, hey, officer, and this cop says, put the sober one behind the wheel, get out of here. So we drove a block east and a block north, and then a block west, and one block above the cop, we put the Lusitania in the river and sent it downriver. Okay, one super quick other little short memory of George. I don't know if I've shared this with him before, but early on in our friendship, George and I just wanted to be like brothers. And there was a film that came out, I want to say in 1982, called Women in Love, with Alan Bates. It was based on the D.H. Lawrence novel. And George and I had gone to see it at the Blue Mouse, if you're old enough to remember that. So we saw that film and we came home and we said, oh my God, this movie about these men who have this friendship is amazing. They're like more than brothers. And there's a scene in the film where Alan Bates and the other actor wrestle naked in front of a fireplace. And so when we got back to George's, we had a few drinks and we thought, let's do it.
I'm gonna
So,
the
house that they were living in at the time had this front living room area that was separated by French doors, and into that room we were talking and
wrestling. It was a very bizarre evening. As most evenings were. I had gone to the rosary of a great aunt who was a devout Catholic. And we had gone, so I went with my mother to the rosary, and I didn't know rosaries were so boring and so long, but it went on and on and on. Sorry to be offensive, I hope I'm not offending anyone. So this ancient woman had died, and I thought, okay, I'll go see Aunt Eva and sit through her rosary, which went on for about 2 hours. And then I came back home, and I found Daniel and George completely naked, rolling about in the house, in the living room.
Shocking.
They had, what was the drink?
Brandy Alexander.
Brandy Alexander's. And while I was sitting with Aunt Eva's rosary, being bored out of my mind, they were there drinking Brandy Alexander's and reenacting the scene from Women in Love all throughout my house. And I came home and I went, what the hell is going on? And they were rolling around and they were doing the wrestling scene. Read the whole thing. I think Oliver Reed's in it, isn't it? Well, anyway, if you can imagine Oliver Reed as George rolling around with, who was that guy? Alan Bates. And I came home and, my God. But it was better than the rosary.
I can add to that is I remember being there wrestling with George in this little front parlor with the French doors, and Marianne opened the door saying, "Come in here," and he goes, "Oh, let's go into the living room." And so no one saw it but Marianne.
Oh my God. Jesse. Jesse! Don't you have something?
You want me to say something? Yeah, say something.
No, just go up there and say something.
Something. Well, I guess I'll just, I don't know, I didn't really have anything to say other than the thing that George taught me was that it doesn't matter if you're good at acting, you can still be an actor. Doesn't matter if you can sing, you can still sing. George doesn't care what you are good at. He just cares that if he trusts you and if he's near you and if you can do a thing, then he will invite you to do a thing with him, and that's his only requirement. So I think for that reason George is an entrepreneur. I've always thought of him as an entrepreneur. I've learned more entrepreneurial things from Uncle George than I have in business school. Obviously he was an artist, but I don't know if he knew this about himself, but he was an entrepreneur in my mind. And because what I think about when I think of an entrepreneur is somebody who does what they can, uses what they have, and starts where they are. And that is what he always did. He would convince me, of all people, to go and act on stage where I have no business doing any of those things. And he would convince people to sing and convince people to write music for him and convince people to just produce something. He didn't care what it was, as long as it wasn't there before and now it's there now. That was his only goal in life. And so that's why the Vivian Maier play is so important to him, is because Vivian didn't know what she was creating when she was making those photographs. She only was interested in just creating the thing. And she didn't share it with anybody, and she didn't tell anybody about it for decades. And then I think she died, and then people found them. And they were amazing photographs, and it was just because she just wanted to create. And so creativity is bringing things down from the universe into the physical plane. And that's what George did. So it doesn't matter if you feel like you want to create something, just create it. Don't worry about what the outcome, don't worry about what people are going to say about it. Don't worry about why people would even want to do this. Just freaking do it and don't worry about anything. And that's basically Uncle George's message. So. Also, legalize marinara.
It's all over my shirt.
Hi, my name is Brian, and I've known George. How are you doing? I'm here. And I feel like I should have prepared more of what I was going to say. The person who would really give me good feedback about this would be George. But I anticipate there's a reason. I'm speaking, people. These are important words. That George would be able to give some good feedback about this, but there's something called Lessons from George, and to compare and contrast George on stage versus George in real life. So I had the pleasure of being in a number of shows over the past 20 plus years with George. And the very first one, he was meant to make his entrance. He rang the doorbell, I answered, the door on stage, and George had a line. Or as an actor, you have lines. But of course, when I opened the door for George to say his line, George didn't say his line. He forgot everything about the play in that instant that I opened the door. And so there was this moment of dread. The play is a high literary quality play called Love, Sex, and the IRS. So if you never had a chance to check that out, please do. And we made it through, of course, as you always do. But that contrasts with George in real life, who when he was at the door, always knew what to say. And knew how to talk about things, and knew how to support you, and knew how to carry things forward. Thanks, Brian, for getting sad. Well, you're welcome, people. Hold on. A second experience on stage with George was we were doing a show called The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged. And he was supposed to be secretly hiding behind a curtain, and I was acting in front of it. And for some weird reason, he held up the curtain rod and hit me right in the middle of my forehead with such velocity that the stage went black. Cartoon birds were chirping around my head. It was terrifying for a moment. George was ferocious on stage, but of course in real life, George was very gentle. One of the most sensitive people I knew, always about people and wanting to gather them. And that's an important lesson in today's world where we sometimes forget that. The importance of bringing people together and loving them, which is what George was about. One other time we were in a play, it was called Happy, and we were friends in the play. We were both drinking in the play, and we were supposed to get into a fight where he was supposed to knock me over and I was supposed to fall on the floor, which happened. He really hit me, and then he tripped over me and landed on top of me. It was super amazing. And George in real life, though, despite the things the world threw at him, always was balanced. He had that balance, was on his feet, and really provided that. It's been a weird 3 months, and there's an interesting culmination tonight with that. But I know George A. would hate that I was crying, and B. would want us to celebrate because it's about that balance. So, love you, George.
I get the bug from but if there's only one thing you could say about George, what would it be? One thing. Just one. One.
Oh, there's Valerie.
No one else is saying anything, so I'm going to here. That was a hard thing to follow. I just feel like one of the things we've learned so much about from everyone is particularly the friendships that George kept, but also the amount of effort he put into ensuring that people from all over the globe felt like they belonged somewhere. It's very amazing. Most of the people I ever met through George were through plays or through some of his like ELI teaching, and that was just a phenomenal aspect of what George did for people. He created communities beyond himself and really accepted everybody where he could, and that was something that I know as I don't know, as a person who kind of didn't grow up in a place where they always felt accepted. It was really nice to have a place to feel like I could find home. So I know Jim has been doing a wonderful job of keeping Wasatch Theater going, and him and George were such a pair that like I don't think people understand that they've created a home for a lot of us who don't have a place to be. So my greatest memory of George was when I found out that he would be teaching in China. And I was like, what do you mean you're going to China? That's so weird. Where did you apply for this? And how did you find this? And he said, oh yeah, there's just like, they were looking for somebody to teach theater and English. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna teach theater and teach people to speak English so that they can actually make their way into colleges in the US, and that's what I'm doing now. And mind you, he developed that program at the U and didn't understand how broadly it expanded. And so when Jess and I heard that, it made me think, oh my God, so there's a job for everybody. Like exactly who you are, there's some sort of job for you. To know that somehow there was an entire program dedicated to him basically being able to do the thing he developed his career around, but also created to bring so many different people from so many different places together to share in understanding theater and drama and the impact of getting to pretend to be somebody else for a little bit. He's a phenomenal human, beyond his cooking and beyond his laughter and beyond his phenomenal dancing, which you guys witnessed. He just was a conduit of hope for a lot of people who didn't know where to find it. So I'm very grateful to have known George, and I know he was grateful to know every single one of you, because that's how he liked to live life. So thanks for coming. And
this will be really fast.
Dominic. Your time.
Yeah.
Wow. I love this.
I'm Dominic. This is going to be really brief, because the only time I really interacted with George was at Plautz family village functions, usually New Year's. But you would know that whenever you got in a conversation with George, that you were about to have the most interesting conversation you had that evening. One thing that me and George shared is that we both taught abroad. We both traveled a lot and lived in Asia. Like earlier, there was a photo of him on the bun with a pudong in the background. And at one point, I didn't know. I had finished my year in Korea. I didn't know if I was going to go to China or Japan or back to Korea or whatever. And I had a few emails with George, and he kind of gave me the lowdown of a couple different places of what to expect, what kind of schools I'd end up into, and being able to have that like info and that little bit of guidance, even though it was only a few emails, but that somebody else had had those experiences that I had had of traveling abroad, being that guy in that room teaching kids just how to enjoy English, how to speak in a different language, how to express themselves. And that was really cool. And yeah, that was it.
sure George was having a hard time. Well, it's been gone since March. I just found out 2 days ago. But anyways, I am from his younger days. I got to know George and Marianne in Kuwait. So, 87. I was there since 84. I'm originally from India. And there was an active American community theater in Kuwait, and we did a lot of plays, and there was somebody who ran that place. And that lady had left, and then there was a pause, nobody was doing anything, and suddenly there was a ad saying, hey, there's an audition for this play. And of course, I showed up to this audition, and that's where George and Marianne met in the small room. And the play was Christmas Carol, the Scrooge. I want you to know how George, his ability to bring people together. That Christmas Carol, I had never heard of Christmas Carol. I grew up in India, I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist. But that play included Palestinians, Indians, English, Filipinos, Americans. And it was one of the biggest hits in the American Community Theater in Kuwait. And for 2 years, I think I pretty much spent every single day with George and Marianne. I was single then, and really at the end of the evening, didn't know where to go, and sort of rang their doorbell and ended up at their place. We did things that were illegal in Kuwait.
If we had been caught, we'd still be in prison.
We could have been in a lot of trouble. But anyways, I left Kuwait in '89 and came to the U.S. and I've been in the U.S. since then. And then I know George and Marianne came back, and I came here to see them a few times, but it has been 13 years. 2010 is the last time I saw them. And I kicked myself for not staying in touch. George is gone. In this world, we need more Georges, not less. So damn you for taking George away. Damn you.
We were the Three Musketeers, and we were so close. We did everything together. And Kavi and I and George, and Kavi's here, and many people never knew that aspect of our lives together, living in the Middle East. Kavi saved our lives, I have to tell you. And he and George were like brothers, away from being brothers. And they both had so many things in common. And of course, the theater brought all of us together. And as Kavi said, our theater productions were a United Nations of great like-minded people. The U.S. ambassador of Kuwait, who in 1990 was taken hostage by the Iraqis during the First Gulf War. He came to all of our shows. He loved us all. But Kavi, honestly, if you think George was the glue of all of us here, Kavi and George were the glue of the American theater in Kuwait.
Wow.
And it has been such an honor to know Kavi throughout the trajectory of his life. He now lives in San Francisco, and so on and so forth, and he flew in here today to be with George. So thank you, Kavi, for everything.
Kim is George's sister-in-law. Kim always loved George very much, and I will tell you, as George's friend for almost 50 years, I have never heard anything but glowing comments about Kim from George. He loved her, he was grateful to She has a few words.
The sad part about this is that I don't do microphones. I'm sorry. This is the hardest thing in the world that I can do. But George. What a man. I love him. I have 3 brothers. I loved him more than my own brothers. We had such fun. I can't even begin to tell you what that man means to me. What a man. That's about all I can say.
It's okay, baby. It's okay.
I have lots of memories, and then, you know, I'm in front of a microphone and they go,
We know you loved him.
I love you.
I bet he
had
loved you
such
too.
adventures with him. So many amazing, amazing adventures. Love George.
Love you, George. Love you, Kimmy.
Okay, I got a confession.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I've been telling the story to everybody that, you know, George got started with his theatrical career and his love for theater with me and him doing, when we were like 10, 11, 12 years old, writing and performing skits for the neighborhood kids. You know, we'd have props and we'd have slapstick and we'd do jokes from Looney Tunes and, you know, and the kids didn't know the difference. But, you know, so we wrote this stuff, perform it in a, set up the stage in the garage and have the neighborhood kids come to watch our show. We'd advertise and tell them they'll get a nickel from their mom. You know, trying to make a business out of it, you know. So we had our own little RNG bank bag of money, you know, cash, you know, so I always said, you know, I was the guy that got him started, but you know what? It's my sister Carol. I had to tell the truth. She got him started when he was like, I don't know, 4 years old, 5 years old. She would play. She had these, you know, 45s, you know, in those days, and play this music, and George would just like locked in. He'd be playing those songs, listening to the music, and then she'd have him reading a book. You know, she'd read books to him, and then she'd take him to the library when he got older with her. And you know, I was pissed because, you know, my brother wasn't playing with me. What's going on here? And so I gotta say, I'm pretty sure that's where I got started. She got him started in listening to music, reading books. And I'm going to have to relent. Carol, sorry. You win. You did it. I was kind of horny in the head to you. I love you, thanks.
Okay, so my turn. I met George like about 30 years ago. That was the first moment I started with life in the United States. As an immigrant, I would say George helps a lot. I'm saying helps, not helped, because I believe he's still helping me in some ways. He is very inclusive, just like what Melanie mentioned, he's very inclusive. He doesn't care about your background, your origin. He cares about your idea. And that's what really matters, a person's idea. Everyone is equal in front of an idea. And because of that, I learned how to be an independent person. I learned how to be American. Because of me, I got my citizenship last year.
Yeah.
So he has inspired so many people in different ways. I believe we are still in the grieving process, but what we really need to do is to honor him by doing the right thing every day, in the way you believe. Yeah, so that's my message to everyone here, to honor him through what you learn from him every day.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you. Beautiful.
Great. That's great.
My name is Pat Mason, and I am Marjorie Scanlon's sister. And Peggy has written a poem in tribute to George, and she's scared to death to do it. But I'm introducing her, so now she has to do it.
Yes. Bravo. Bravo.
Thank you. I'm still nervous, but I want to show everyone. George was my teacher, friend, family, and a tutor. He found out I have a talent to write poetry. So he encouraged me to keep write and write. I wrote a lot. So this I wrote for George. So if you guys don't understand my pronunciation, just forget. You never left. We still heard you laughing aloud around us. You never left. We still smell your delicious cooking. You never left. We still listen to your songs. You never left. We still watch your plays. You never left. We still feel your unconditional love. You left, but never left our memories. You are like a wind touching our hearts. You are like a sunshine embracing us. You are like a rain, nurturing our lives. You are like snow, freezing our memories. You left, but never left our journey. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jody, and I'm going to tell you how I met George. I had just moved to Salt Lake. I'd lived in a lot of places in the West, and in the City Weekly, there was an audition for one-act plays. And so I went to the audition, and I got the part, and Cammie was the director. Katie Shulman wrote this play about a real-life story. And the story was a husband and wife are sitting around, and their daughter comes to them and says, "Hey, guess what? I'm gay." And the mom, who is me, freaks out. And the dad, who is George, is reading a newspaper. And we rehearsed at Cammie's house a lot. I kept saying, when am I gonna rehearse with the guy who is playing my husband? And they're like, oh yeah, soon. And so then when I met George, he only had a couple of lines in this play. And me and Alicia, the girl, had quite a few. And it was like a Jewish family. So it was like we had fun with the Jewish accents. I was saying, "You're just saying this to get at me. What's going on?" You know. And then George is reading his newspaper, and then his line was like, "Well, at least she's Jewish." And so when I met George, you know, we did it like once, and he was like, "That's good, we're fine." I'm like, I had just moved here, I'd done a lot of theater in LA and stuff. You know, I'm used to rehearsing many, many, many times, and George was like, "We got it, we're good." I'm like, "Oh, wait, we have to do it again." And so he was like, "Okay." So we did it a few times. We had so much fun. People walked out during the play because there was some lines in it. And it was just always so fun. And literally, just moving here and doing a play with Wasatch and George playing my husband in this play that was so funny. It was, you know, I hadn't met many people here in Salt Lake. And that just introduced me. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have so much fun in this theater." And I did.
Beautiful. Love you, George. Love you.
I know.
You okay?
The lyric, the parody lyric.